I love that you had the present day actors playing themselves in the younger footage. And the way I interpreted that, and again, I don't know if this is how you intended it, was
Now
they
I want to
were
hear your interpretation.
okay, they were reliving the memory as their older selves, but Chadwick is still the younger version.
Every studio we took this film to said no. Netflix was the last place.
Hmm.
So love the Netflix. And also it was Netflix for a budget, for a price. And to add another $100 million to do special effects de aging was not, this film will not be made. Also, in my experience, being a cinephile, I think a lot of times when they choose actors to play the younger version of the so I just, what you described, how you saw it, was the way I thought it worked. And I also knew that the audience is very intelligent, like yourself, and very quickly they would get on the bus. And as you eloquently stated, that's that's where the thinking was.
There's two technical questions I want to ask you because
Ask away.
I'm a filmmaking fan. I've been watching you since I was a kid. The double dolly. I know it's a question you've answered before about the choices you make and how it's done. I was just curious how you decide where it's going to be in the film, and I get it from an emotional standpoint. Black Klansman had an amazing one. Malcolm X has one of the most incredible ones I've ever seen. I'm just curious how you make the decision of where to put that.
Well, when Ernest Dickerson, my DP classmate for NYU, we were just doing it because we were like not that far out of film schools. We were like film school geeks showing off. But then all I like to say also, I did not make up this shot. I did not originate it. But Ernest and I had a discussion that if we use this shot, it has to be come from what we're trying to do. It has to be motivated. So that's if we use it, it just can't be showing off. Has to have to be motivation for it. And you name two very good uses of it: Malcolm X and at the end of Black Klansman.
Yeah. And Inside Man had a great one too. You've combined some of the most brilliant filmmaking with the aspect ratio changes, Terrence's score. I absolutely love the way you did that. And movies give us the opportunity to have experiences that we will not ever be able to experience firsthand. And I'll never forget seeing Radio Raheem's scene and Do the Right Thing and how that stayed with me my entire life. And I think Delroy's performance is going to do the same thing for me later on. I'm just curious for you growing up, was there a film and or scene that affected you like that stayed with you, that gave you a different experience, that has kind of stayed with you as a filmmaker throughout your years?
Now, because when I was, a kid, I wanted to play second base for New York Mets. So
Hmm.
filmmaking was not even a thing that I was even thinking about or I can do.
In regards to the filmmaking that you've done, though, looking at Do the Right Thing to now, you are dealing with subject matters that little to no change is occurring. Like the war itself, you have a great line in the film where you say the war never ends. The police brutality is never ending from what happens.
Racism.
Right, racism. So I wanted
That
to
would be a big list. Homophobia. We could go on and on and on. And so it's sad, where we are in the world today. But people are on the streets, black, brown, and white.
yeah, and this is going to air in
White,
Washington D.C. Spike, and
yeah, white folks showing up, peace and love.
yeah, and
The we feel it. We feel the love. And I was looking at a list. I mean, I can't talk about DC because back in the day, DC was called Chocolate City. Not no more. Now I got another nickname, Vanilla Swirl. But I like to say that. No, but I was just joking. Now, shout out to my DC people. You were there. We all saw what that thing was the other day. That was some straight up BS for a photo op. You were very peaceful. The whole world saw what happened, and you come back stronger in a day since. So, peace and love, and the struggle continues. I love you, DC. We see you. We see you, DC.
Well, Spike, thank you. Love the film. Thank you for this film. Love the aspect ratios. I appreciate you, sir.
You know who you look like? You know who you remind me of?
Who?
John Turturro with the beard. You never heard that before?
I've never heard John Turturro, but I love John Turturro, so I'll take that. Thank you, Spike. I appreciate that, sir. Thank
John
you.
John Turturro with the beard. That's you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Take care. DC.
Yes,
love
sir.
You.
Love you too, man. Peace. Delroy, I'll start with you first specifically because I found it so interesting that Spike had you play your present day selves in the Vietnam footage from the past. And I found that to be such an interesting aspect. And I was just curious from an acting standpoint, did you find yourself acting differently in those moments? Did you have to act younger? Because I read it as an interpretation of you guys just re-experiencing what you went through as you walked through the jungle again. I was just interested in that. It was very fascinating.
That's a great way of putting it. That's a fantastic way of putting it, that we're re-experiencing. I haven't thought about it in those terms, but I think that is very, very accurate. And what I can tell you additionally is when I read it, it did not, when I read those flashback scenes and I read that we would be in those flashback scenes as our present day selves, it was not jarring. It felt right. And certainly when we were playing the scenes, it felt right. So I'm sorry. So from that standpoint, excuse me, I'm sorry. From that standpoint, it was seamless. And so all one had to do was concentrate on playing the truth of the scene. And that's what I did. And I think that's what the other actors did.
To me, it felt like an interpretation of them reliving it again as they're going through the jungle. So I wanted to ask you about that aspect of it, but also the aspect ratio shifts were unbelievably cool to see because the 4:3 in the older footage, then the widescreen in the present day, and then the archival. I was just wondering how those technical things played into how you performed and how you felt about playing your normal aged selves in those flashbacks.
Well, a lot of the flashback scenes that were used as far as the 8mm was me. So I should get a major award for that, and Spike should just move to the side. But go ahead, Isiah. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I love the fact that we did not age in the flashbacks, because I felt, we had such an important story to tell, and that would have taken away from the story. Yep. It would have given it a bit of a false feel, and it was like, no, this is who we are. We're going to tell our story. We're going to keep our finger on the pulse, and we're just going to drive this home. I wouldn't want anybody sitting around wondering, look at the way he's looking or whatever. You just kept with the story as it went along, and it didn't become a distraction.
And for you as well?
I think as well that there is a subconscious communication that's happening to the audience, that no matter what age you are, having had that experience stays with you actually as it is, which is, I think, the underlying premise of PTSD, that no matter how old this person is, when they think about it, it affects their body the same way it did when they were 18, 19, 20 years old, whether they're 70, 75, or 80 years old now. And I think that was the very subtle way that that part of that story is being told. As for the camera shots, I think that was ingenious, because you know, as Norm says, the Oscar-winning Norm for taking that footage, it takes the audience from something that is archival to bringing it into the present, you know, and these subliminal messages and traveling is what stimulates your intellect and allows you not only to be entertained, but to also be educated.
Yeah, it's also a great tool for immersion mixed in with Terrence's score. It's just a brilliant execution in regards to that. I wanted to talk to you specifically about the handshake. And I was wondering if that, yeah, the dap. Yeah, I was wondering if that particularly came from anywhere specifically. Was it made up for the movie? Was it somebody else?
No, that was real for the time. The brothers, if you go back, I was not aware of it. I'll be really honest. But if you go back and you look at this footage of brothers in Nam in '68, in the late '60s, doing that dap, and we had two brothers whose names I cannot remember right now, but they came while we were in rehearsal and they showed us and taught us those various daps. I gotta give props right now. Isiah Whitlock Jr. had it down. I was struggling. Isiah Whitlock, yeah.
Let's go.
He'd be chewing gum and just throwing it down. But anyhow, the answer to your question is it's real, very authentic for the time. And we had two young men came to when we were in Thailand in rehearsal, and they taught us those daps.
Isiah, I know you've been asked this question probably a million times in your career, but the famous line that you say in Spike's films, I'm sorry if you told the story before. I'm just curious what you remember about that starting, like where do you, and how you knew it was going to be a continued bit like in the films throughout the year. Like, do you remember when you first did it and kind of why it became a thing?
The first time I did it was in Spike Lee's 25th Hour.
Right.
And really before that was when I auditioned for the Spike Lee's 25th Hour. That's where all that started, where he said, do that again. He says, you gotta keep that, man. You gotta do that. And I remember thinking, yeah, I'll do it if you hire me. But but that's where that started, was in the 25th Hour. I did not know that it would turn into what it turned into, because in all fairness, it wasn't like anybody had not heard it. I mean, I just thought that was just something people did, you know. No idea it would turn into, it would be my legacy.
For both of you, hearing him say it, was it kind of iconic? I mean, I know you're in a movie and you're acting, but was it cool to kind of be there and hear him say it?
Absolutely. I mean, that is something that, like he says, it's an identifiable thing that he's known for. I mean, I think there's even stories of you being stopped in airports where people go, "She," you know, that. So, yeah, it was definitely a thing that helped move the story along, but it also was so familiar that it actually felt so good.
You're laughing. What about you?
It took a while for me to get used to Isiah saying it in that situation, but I dug it because it gave me, it just lifted me out of it, because that's the kind of camaraderie that we needed in the flick, you know. Yeah. Oh, and God. That's what it brought it to.
You for $1 million, what else are you going to say? You know?
Right.
Well, listen,
Yeah. But I gotta say, on that archival footage, for me, that was the only problem that I had with the film. Was no, I'm teasing.
I know. Jonathan, both of you have made very important films in your careers that I think speak volumes to what's happening right now. And I live in DC. We have a lot of people protesting in DC right now. I was just wondering if you had a message for DC in general, people who are protesting, just advice for people to help with the change, because I really want to bring change. Obviously everyone does. And I'm wondering for you specifically, like what message you would have for our audience in DC.
Jonathan.
Oh, yes, sir. I would say, you know, and I'll just say it from my point of view, you know, watching everything that's going on, rage comes in, you know, anger comes in, sadness comes in. And I think the cheat sheet is feel it. Let it be inflamed, metabolize it. and it's a gift. And please let your emotions make you smarter.
Mm-hmm.
Let all that energy make you smarter and put you into smart action, into good action.
So I would say vote. One of the aspects of everything that is happening right now, which is extraordinary, make sure there's an end product. And one of the end products is to vote at the appointed time, and also pay attention to the down ballot segments on your ballot, all the people who, the local elections, because as Obama very eloquently put it yesterday, they are the ones in charge of, they're all elected positions, and they're the ones who hire police chiefs. They're the ones, all of your local politics, those people are put in place from elected officials. So pay attention to the down ballot on your ballots, other than the presidential and the ones at the top. Pay attention to each one of those segments. Try to educate yourself as much as possible and vote accordingly. And also, I will tell you that one of the things that is heartening to me about what's happening, and what Jonathan said is so true, that rage, you've earned that rage. You've earned it. But it is equally important to use that rage decisively and smartly. And my son and myself and some of my son's friends were at a march here in Oakland on Monday. The march was put together by two young men I've known since they were in middle school. That is heartening. To the extent that the people who are in the streets marching and demonstrating are young people. There are older people, yes, but it's being fueled by younger people. That is really heartening to me, because you are the future. And yes, it may be a cliche, but own that. Own your future.